police case has now been opened after that viral video showing the Bitou Municipality Deputy Mayor Nokuzola Kolwapi firing what appears to be a gun into the air during a cultural celebration in Plettenberg Bay. She's maintaining it's a toy gun. This was a symbolic act, but this footage has reignited concerns about celebratory gunfire and public safety. So before I bring our guest in to help us understand the risks behind it, and that guest will be Jannie van Westhuizen, who is an independent forensic firearm expert, let's replay that video for our audience. All right, we'll stop it there. Jannie, good morning. Welcome to the program. Thanks for being with us. So a lot of conversation online about what we've witnessed and what we heard there. There's a great deal of conversation, I can imagine, just with people wondering why somebody would do something like that, questions about the authenticity of that firearm being a real firearm, her position that this wasn't a real firearm, it was a toy gun. As an expert, what do you notice when you watch that video, and what would your initial assessment be? I know that the police investigations are continuing, so we'll wait for their official results, but what do you think?
First of all, good morning, Iman, and thank you for your time, and it's a pleasure hosting with you. I've reviewed this video yesterday, and what is visible in this video, it is a lady discharging a semi-automatic pistol, holding the firearm in her right hand, discharging the pistol up in the air at different angles. And if you slow the video down, which I did, it actually seems like the firearm in this matter is actually ejecting fired cartridge cases from the chamber. And it's quite visible during the shooting sequence.
So that would lead you to conclude what?
Well, we don't give an opinion. I can give an opinion on video footage and still photography, but we still need to examine, or the police still need to examine the firearm being submitted to the forensic science laboratory and the firearm unit to actually do mechanical testing and external tests to see if it's in working condition and if it is a real firearm according to the Firearms Control Act.
So there are a couple of things that you mentioned there. Well, anyway, just to confirm, as you say, that you don't want to definitively say it's real or not based on a visual assessment. The responsible thing is to submit that, have it submitted for, ballistics testing, I imagine, an authentication test to basically say that out loud in public. One of the other reasons we wanted to bring you in was we see in different spaces where people, fire firearms into the air. I'm talking about live ammunition now. And let's move the conversation to confirmed live ammunition discharge in a setting such as this. What would some of those risks be?
First of all, I don't know if this individual is licensed to possess such a firearm or caliber, or have a license to possess ammunition that would chamber that specific firearm. If not, that is a criminal offense, and discharging a firearm in public area or in a building up in the air is a criminal offense as well. You don't know where those fired bullets actually go into the air. They go up in the air, but at different angles, and it can cause serious injury, and it can cause people to die during the bullet coming down at terminal velocity, which has enough velocity and speed to perforate a human skull or cause seriously bodily harm.
Let's stay with that just a little bit, Jannie, and just tease it out for us. So, again, we see people firing a shot into the air. As you say, it still has a great deal of velocity to the point where it can penetrate, a human being or an object or whoever's in the vicinity, and it can cause significant damage, including possible fatalities. So just talk to us about the sciences, about how the environment affects those projectiles, those bullets.
Well, if you discharge a firearm in the air at a vertical angle, we refer to when the fired bullet leaves the muzzle. It's called muzzle velocity. That's the velocity when the fired bullet leaves the barrel at a certain speed. And then when it's fired at a vertical position, the bullet would reach a terminal velocity as it comes back to Earth, which can reach anything between 116 to 330 kilometers an hour, which has enough speed to penetrate and perforate skull and cause bodily harm.
Wow, that's massive. That's a massive amount of speed. And the reason I ask the question is a lot of people believe, and I think in our communities, you almost, revere people who can be a little bit notorious, bringing, firearm out. It could be when somebody, and as we've seen it before, drag races or at a funeral or a celebration, as we're seeing in this particular depiction. People believe that firing it into the air is harmless, and you're absolutely saying it isn't harmless, and you've just shared with us some of those risks.
It is very harmful if you discharge a firearm up in the air, and especially at different angles. Terminal velocity bullets can still be deadly for several reasons. It's got sufficient speed. There's a vulnerable target in that trajectory, and it's an angled shot. They are more dangerous because the bullet at an angle maintains some of its initial ballistic trajectory and less likely to tumble down during the descent. This means it travels at much higher speeds than a bullet in free fall, posing an even greater lethal threat. So, you should not discharge a firearm up in the air at any angle in a public area. I'm actually dealing with certain matters in Northern Africa, where we're presenting training at this moment in different countries. And they have several of these incidents taking place where police and members of the public discharge firearms up in the air. And then a day or two later, they come to know that these bullets, or stray bullets as it's well known, has caused significant bodily harm or fatalities.
Yeah. And also, in the discharging of firearms, the recoil, which then, I suppose, re-angulates or repositions the firearm where there might be, a bullet in the chamber or something. So, again, you might inadvertently squeeze off a shot without realizing, that you've done it. Just talk to us about the science of all of that. Again, I've put that very clumsily to you. In this case, you're saying based on some of the visual assessments, this could be a semi-automatic weapon, but you can see, the angle of the wrist changing after that initial discharge. Why is it important that you do have the training to understand the caliber of weapon that you're using, the impact on your body after having, fired off a shot, especially if that's happening in a crowded environment?
Well, if we refer to the submitted video, this individual is actually celebrating in a public area, and she is surrounded by people actually looking at this scenario while she's discharging a firearm in the air. Up in the air at different angles, and her finger is on the trigger. Now, a semi-automatic pistol will discharge ammunition as long as there is ammunition in the magazine, and if it's the last fired being discharged, the slide will stay open due to internal factors of the firearm and safety measurements. I don't think she's acquainted with the Firearm Act law and safety when it comes to firearms, because she's walking up and down, and the majority of all of them actually are being discharged up in the air, these fired rounds, bullets. So, and then at one stage she's holding it very close to her body and then dropping it down with her finger basically on the trigger at all times. So she could have inadvertently just pulled the trigger and maybe injured someone else, either with a ricochet bullet or a straight line of fire. So it's a very unsafe place to be, and she shouldn't be doing that in a public area.
So again, and I think you said that at the beginning, there are a number of questions that arise out of this particular incident, a verification that it was, indeed, a real weapon. But even if you have, I don't want to say a replica weapon, but another weapon that might look like that is able to discharge, projectiles, how risky would it have been anyway in that immediate environment? And what comes close to looking like this that could be not a real weapon, but a version of it?
Well, they referred to the statement called a replica. Now, replica means that it's a copy of something. It could have been a replica of a certain make and model semi-automatic pistol, but in this video, the firearm is actually ejecting fired cartridge cases, and there's a recoil action taking place that's loading a new round into the chamber with a recoil action. So, and then after discharging, the actual pistol in this video is ejecting a fired cartridge case. So that's why I'm saying I can give an opinion on video footage or still photography, but I think that this firearm should be and must be submitted for external, internal tests to actually establish if it is a real firearm with a semi-automatic pistol that's able to discharge 9mm parabellum caliber ammunition or any other caliber for that matter.
Yeah. Let's go to the Firearm Controls Act, Jannie, and what are some of the charges that, should this be confirmed to have been a real weapon and that live ammunition, what charges could this individual and others be facing in a similar setting?
Well, if you found in possession of a firearm and ammunition and you found guilty, the Firearms Control Act says that you can face a minimum charge of up to 15 years of being in possession of an unlicensed firearm and up to 15 years being in possession of that certain caliber ammunition.
So it's pretty serious, right, the punishments?
Yes, it is. And, if you discharge a firearm in public and you don't have you've got it in control, you can cause serious damage and fatalities. And they learn, you get taught how to actually use a firearm when you apply for a certain license and a caliber firearm.
So just quickly talk to us about gun licenses and training. I mean, how much does it take to be qualified to fire a firearm?
How much does it take?
In terms of training, yeah.
Yeah, you need to undergo specific training. So to make you acquainted with the specific firearm that you are actually purchasing and applying a license for, you need to go through the subjective training within South Africa, stipulated to possess and to handle such a specific firearm or caliber firearm.
Jannie, thank you so much for talking to us this morning, sharing what I think are really important insights about the risks associated with, firing any weapon really into the air, the velocity that those projectiles still maintain and the damage they can cause on the ground. I think it's been hugely instructive and insightful. Really appreciate